Hello, welcome to Family Values. My name's Joe Woods.
My name's Tom Hicks.
It's Friday night. I've come back from work a few hours ago. Tom's come back from work about 15 minutes ago. Let's be honest, it's been a boring fucking week. Away from basically Johnson actually giving in his proposals to the EU. He wants, obviously, as you said, he wants to scrap the backstop agreement, but what he wants to essentially replace it with boggles the mind. Tom, do you want to take this away?
Most objectively as possible, he effectively wants the checks to happen outside or 5 to 10 miles away from the border, is my understanding. So it won't be a border, it will be a sort of little truck stop where you go into and declare your goods, and then you can go through the Irish border, and there won't be any sort of turrets or anything to flare up tensions, or at least that's the theory.
So, I mean, I know the fear here is with like a 10-mile exclusion zone between each fucking checkpoint, you could be looking at essentially a lawless land between, or a smuggler's paradise between. I mean, let's be honest, there's already smuggling between Northern Ireland and Ireland anyway. There's no physical border of checks, so, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a common trade area between the UK and Republic of Ireland, and that's been the case for donkey's years, as far as I can remember.
So it's been a mixed reaction. As you can imagine, the opposition parties and the EU have come back and said, you know, well, this ain't going to happen. We don't agree with this. But the DUP and ERG have come back, particularly on the DUP side of things. Arlene Foster's come back and said she's happy with it. She's got that Johnson's got the backing of the DUP. The reality is, because the closer they are to any kind of checks and even a hard border with the Republic, the DUP are happy. For what reason actually are the ERG happy with this?
The ERG, I think there's two aspects of it. One is the slight alteration to the political declaration, which effectively means that there's less likelihood that we would end up with the actual deal, because this is still just the withdrawal agreement, the actual deal being a customs union and being what's colloquially known as the softer form of Brexit. They see this as more of a gateway to a more harder Brexit than Mrs May's deal. And the other aspect, which I think is a lot more realpolitik, is they are getting scared that it might not happen at all if they don't get something done, or they fear an actual second referendum is more likely the more time passes. So I think those are the two factors that are burning on the ERG's mind. And if they don't want to be the people that go down in history as the people that didn't get on board with it, and
there was no Brexit,
and there was
no deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of the ERG, and for lack of a better term, the sensible ERG, I don't know what the fuck that means, but point being, they don't want a no deal. I'm pretty sure most people in the ERG don't want a no deal.
Well, they know how politically toxic it will be,
yes.
Regardless of what they think the actual situation of the no deal will be.
They are not the Brexit party, they are not UKIP. But by that same token, where do you see the Leave voting population standing on this?
Well, it's difficult to sort of quantify it, because it's such a complicated issue. You can't really get poll numbers on it. But I would say, just from sort of listening to people calling into phone shows and everything, that it's kind of split. A lot of people don't like it because they have sort of bought the the only way to get out
it's
properly
is a
no deal.
Yeah.
And a lot of Leavers are still on the side, which I would definitely say my own. Well, a withdrawal agreement in principle is not a bad idea. In fact, I think it's the only way to really do it without causing major disruption.
You're talking May's deal, essentially, right?
Well, not so much May's deal, but the principle of there being a transition period.
Yeah.
I agree with that idea.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely more warming to Boris's idea of what that looks like. I think one of the main points as well with this deal is that it gives the Northern Ireland Assembly the right to choose whether they actually like the situation, and they get a chance to vote on it. Well,
can I just say this, and I don't mean to sound coarse or ignorant, but fuck the Northern Irish Assembly, they've not sat for 3 years.
Well, this is the point. It's like, well,
fuck them, they don't get a say.
Yeah.
The fact that the DUP even get a say in this just because of the confidence and supply deal, fuck them.
Well, that's actually the beginning of a lot of unionists in Northern Ireland at the moment. They are not happy with the deal, because the the general principle of there being an effective regulatory border between the Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK is basically an abandonment of the concept of a union. And that's what they're most important.
Can I just make this clear? Away from the complications on the border with this weird, staggered customs posts, I usually don't have much against this deal because it's effectively just May's deal brought back with a change to the backstop.
Yeah.
Or the backstop thrown out. So in all honesty, I've got no issue with this all in all. I can see where the DUP could potentially have problems with... sorry, not the DUP. I can see where Sinn Féin could potentially have problems with them. But again, fuck them, because they're not sitting in the Irish Parliament in Stormont, and they're not sitting in Westminster. So fuck them, you're not part of the process.
Yeah, which they freely admit to and are happy to do it because they don't see the UK government and the UK Parliament as being a legitimate entity for their constituents. So they have been they've never voted at all, which is something that I wish the Scottish MPs would give us the courtesy on.
Fuck me, I had this discussion yesterday with someone. Yeah. If only the SNP actually had the morals of the shit of Sinn Féin. Yeah. I mean, which was, we won't vote in Parliament because we don't see the British government as the sovereign state overlooking Northern Ireland, where the Scots claim the SNP claim the same thing, yet will vote on everything that affects the English the most.
Yes, yeah, they'll vote on stuff that purely only affects England and Wales, whereas and they should have a vote on stuff that affects the entire United Kingdom, no doubt.
Because they are part of the United Kingdom, of course. But don't claim in one breath that you don't want any part in the British electoral system, and in the other breath, you're completely part of the process and will take part in votes that won't affect Scotland, but yet will affect both, England and Wales.
Yeah, there does seem to be a very much political hypocrisy on that level, which is difficult to sort of communicate because Scottish politics is quite insular when they're having their conversations about it.
Where the fuck are we going with this, by the way?
What?
Where did we come from with this?
I don't know.
We were talking about the Northern Irish Assembly's view on Johnson's backstop agreement, or scrapping of the backstop agreement. Actually, I would like to find out more from Sinn Féin what they view on this.
They generally keep quite quiet on any sort of matters for the reasons as they don't really find it a legitimate entity, although they will. I think they spend a lot of time in their constituency, just doing constituency work effectively.
I don't... people are going to hate me for this. I don't tend to hold what both the DUP and Sinn Féin hold in much higher regard, just because they're both essentially political wings of two armed factions. Those armed factions have split off from those political wings now, but the reality is, they've still got to have ties to those factions, and I'm generally not someone that takes sides in the Northern Irish situation just because I see myself as part of a modern, stable country, and I don't see Northern Ireland as really, helping that image.
No, and it's something that is very much their issue and should sort of remain their issue, but we can objectively say from the outside it is very good that we don't have that type of divisions. There's even with Scotland, they have the Catholic and Protestant thing up there, particularly in Glasgow, but that's never... it's never exacerbated to what it has been.
Can I just fucking make this point, which is the idea in a lot of people's minds, particularly Americans, particularly a certain amount of Irish people, the idea that it's the English, at least in sort of modern day terms, that perpetuate the Northern Irish problem on the sides of the Unionists is fucking bollocks. Yeah. Most English people could give a shit.
No, exactly.
I'm pretty sure most of the British government would like to get rid of Northern Ireland, and pretty much all of the Northern Irish settlers are of Protestant descent.
Yeah, the reason why Northern Ireland is still part of...
are of Scottish descent.
Yeah, the reason why Northern Ireland is still part of the United Kingdom is because of the Unionists and no one else really. And I think a lot of people in Northern Ireland kind of get that, but I think it's more of a hardcore south of the border thing where they still blame the English for holding their land back and
which
being
again is ridiculous.
Yeah, but it is that sentiment why people don't want a hard border, because they realise that will escalate very quickly because people will start shooting at it, and then the Unionists will militarise, then there'll be more militarisation on the Republican side, and it will just escalate.
I don't think I disagreement with someone the other week on this. I see planned attacks now and again on any kind of customs or border post that would go up, or see any kind of sign of a hard border to be attacked by any kind of Republican faction on either side of the border. Yeah, I could see it. I don't see it becoming a common occurrence and turning into civil conflict again. And I'll tell you why, and that's because most of the armed wings, or even a lot of the people who dropped the armed struggle in both the IRA and in the UVF, they're all now drug dealers.
Yeah.
They're all now drug smugglers. They're all involved in organised crime. And guess what? Drug dealing earns you a hell of a lot more than terrorism.
Yeah, and well, this is such common knowledge, but it was a storyline on Sons of Anarchy about a decade ago.
Oh, really?
How, there was an entire storyline where they spent half the season actually in Ireland because that's how the biker gang got their guns, was through the IRA. Yeah.
Oh my god, that is funny. But basically, for anyone who doesn't know, in the years since the Good Friday Agreement was the agreement brokered between the Republic of Ireland, Britain, America and the EU, and obviously signed between the two main political parties in Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin and DUP, or what was back then the Ulster Unionists. Essentially, it was a ceasefire agreement. It's pretty much held to this day, with bar, the odd shooting now and again, the odd bomb attack. I mean, the year after, I remember it really well, in 98, you had a really nasty bombing in the town of Omagh that killed about 30 people. But for the most part, it's definitely, it's no longer civil war. It is quieter. Where the fuck was I going with this? Anyway, since the Good Friday Agreement, basically both sides have just turned to drug dealing, and naturally, as they probably already involved with anyway, just because that's how they earn the money for their guns, I suppose. But
and it's difficult for anybody else, sort of any up and coming drug dealers, to move in on that because of the sort of cultural implications of going against the local paramilitary groups or ex-paramilitary.
And the reality is, if you're making money, particularly good money, from smuggling drugs or selling drugs, you're not going to want to, for lack of a better term, blow up your spot.
Yeah. You don't want to rock the boat too much of a cash flow.
Unless you're, Moroccan dealers in Amsterdam who seem to be shooting the fucking place up at the moment. And actually, that's a really interesting one. Let's break the fourth wall on this. There's not much going on politically at the moment, so we've been kind of scratching our heads about what to talk about away from Johnson's agreement this week, or proposal for the agreement. But have you been keeping an eye on what's been going on in Amsterdam over the last year?
I've known what you've just said, but it has been escalating violence over the gangs, but I'm not too sure on the details.
So I suppose we won't go too far into this, but essentially, for the longest of time, Holland has been a hotbed of drug smuggling, not just with hash and weed, obviously, but it has been an entry point for cocaine and hash and heroin coming from North Africa into Spain, up into Holland, and then across to Britain.
Yeah.
So naturally, a mix of different ethnic gangs were involved in that smuggling. You had British gangs, you had ethnic white Dutch gangs, and then you had Moroccan gangs, Spanish gangs. The Moroccans have kind of pushed everyone out, and they're extremely violent. I mean, I can't think of any current major organised crime groups in Europe, and I include in this the Albanians, the Italians and the Russians, who are as unpredictable as Moroccans. And in Amsterdam particularly, which seems to be the sort of the home and the capital of the Moroccan mafia in Europe, they've become extremely violent and unpredictable. Mainly, they've been firing RPG, rocket-propelled grenades into the lobbies of newspaper offices that have been reporting on their crimes. They've been beheading their rivals. There's a particularly famous case where a young man was beheaded with a machete, and his head was placed opposite his favourite shisha bar in the middle of Amsterdam. There's been AK-47 attacks, people blown apart with AK-47s. Amsterdam's become really violent.
And that is crazy, and it's crazy that it's not a more sort of publicised story, is it? I mean, I've seen the old news story on it, but you would have thought that would have been, I mean, just think how much coverage the increase in knife crime has got in this country.
Yeah, in the UK, yeah. Where, Holland, particularly Amsterdam and the city of Maastricht, have become war zones. We don't talk about it here. It's become really violent. Not just really violent, but really extreme. I mean, you guys have said, machine gun attacks, grenade attacks, rocket attacks, beheadings, and I mean all this kind of extreme stuff you think of, these extreme actions you'd think in the Middle East and places like that. It's started just really, just via drug wars between rival Moroccan clans, And this is the point I missed out on, probably why they're so unpredictable. They are coked out of their fucking nuts. This is probably why they're so unpredictable. Most gangs don't touch much of their product.
No, don't get high on your own supply.
Exactly. These young Moroccan gangs, they are fucking coked out as shit. And I saw it when I was in Amsterdam a little while ago, just how agitated they and just ready to basically get violent they are.
It is absolutely crazy. And as I say, it's something that probably needs a little bit more publicity. Do you have any theory as to why it's not more publicised?
I don't know. I don't want to go all kind of right-wing, I suppose, kind of reactionary on this. I think the Moroccan element has something to do with it. I think, obviously, naturally, particularly in a very, very liberal country like the Netherlands, I think there's a shying away from maybe portraying this as a Moroccan issue or Moroccan community issue.
Well, they have people like Geert Wilders who are very, not just anti-immigration, just outright anti-Islam.
Oh yeah.
So not wanting to stoke those fires is a justifiable motivation, but at what cost, as it were?
Yeah, and I don't even think this is necessarily an issue with the religion of Islam. It's literally organised crime groups.
There's not a lot of fundamentalists coked up, are there?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I suppose the Taliban is, to be fair, is smacked out of his nut most of the time. Massive, heroin intake in the Taliban. But the point being, these Moroccan clans, the Morocco Mafia as it's known, the amount of just digging into their own supply, I mean, really has caused these young men to go extremely violent. To be fair, I mean, you can imagine it's very much reported on it in the Netherlands,
right?
And via family connections to the lowlands, and they talk about it a lot.
Okay.
That's how partly I know quite a bit. But it is reported. I mean, when major incidents happen, like I said, that rocket attack on I can't remember. Was it La Republique? It was one of those major Dutch papers where literally they took a rocket-propelled grenade to their lobby.
Jesus.
Luckily, no one died.
Well, that's probably why that didn't make the news. I mean, particularly when you consider the sensitivity around attacking media institutions in Europe, particularly northwestern Europe.
Yeah. I mean, you do something in regards to Charlie Hebdo, right?
Yeah. But obviously, there's very, very different motivations for those two attacks.
Again, I mean, the Charlie Hebdo attacks and the Bataclan attacks were orchestrated by more kind of terroristic groups.
Yeah.
But again, those groups of young Moroccan and Algerian men again had connections to the Moroccan mafia of both Holland and Belgium.
Right.
I think specifically Belgium. So when they found, the name escapes me of the main perpetrator of Bataclan attacks, he was held up in somewhere in the back end of the Anderlecht neighbourhood in Brussels. If anyone who doesn't know the geography of Brussels, the Anderlecht neighbourhood is the neighbourhood directly to the west and north of the state of the main station. Big fucking station, big neighbourhood. But the further you go into Anderlecht, when Brussels is a rough city in general, but Anderlecht is a particularly rough neighbourhood, and the back ends of it, the council estate areas of it, I mean, are very much a, lack of a better term, a North African ghetto.
Right.
A very much close-knit community, not a lot of, dealing with the outside world.
Right, it's sort of insular, is the sort of, or what Americans would would refer to as no-go zones.
Yeah,
anyone who lives in Europe knows that's a complete.
And I hate that term because it's bollocks.
Yeah. Green Street would definitely be classified as that. I'm going there all the time.
If I remember correctly, Green Street has come up before in American articles as one of these no-go zones. Yet we both go there all the time.
Yeah, I literally have a workplace of one of our clients.
And again, I want to make this clear. Me talking about the issue with the Moroccan mafias in northwestern Europe is not me again attacking any North African communities. I'm just making the point. There is a real issue at the moment with extreme violence perpetrated by very drug-addled young men.
Yeah, I mean, with pretty much all communities that do suffer from those, from having those violence, it's pretty much most of the time the actual communities that suffer the most on it.
Oh yeah.
I've been talking about, you see that in Black America and in black ghettos.
I don't know if you remember, but a few weeks ago, it made a little bit of the news, but not much. On a Friday night, one night, I failed to remember the name of the neighbourhood on the outskirts of Paris, somewhere in the Benelux. obviously it's a Moroccan neighbourhood, and a young Moroccan kid, obviously a drug dealer, was being served a sandwich in a cafe, and this is how fucking drugged up he was, how coked up he was. His sandwich wasn't served quick enough, so he shot the waiter dead.
Yeah, I did hear about that. This is absolutely crazy, particularly being a gun crime as well, because you just don't expect that in.
How off your fucking cake can you be that in the middle of a cafe in a public place you choose to shoot the waiter dead?
Yeah, it's not exactly subtle or the elements of a criminal mastermind there.
Over a sandwich as well.
Yeah. Speaking of, you brought up Brussels there, which sort of triggered something which I think is quite interesting, which is I think it's Albania and North Macedonia have now entered into negotiations with the European Union to effectively become members.
So North Macedonia, or Macedonia for anyone who isn't Greek, because that's a ridiculous name to call it. I know they've agreed to it, but it's, anyway, point being...
Formerly the former Yugoslav Republic.
The former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, as it was called for about 20 odd years, but last year it changed its name to North Macedonia to basically appease Greece.
Yeah.
Essentially what's happened is North Macedonia started... it became a candidate in 2003 to join the EU. It's actually been waiting a long time. It would have joined earlier if it wasn't for the issues with Greece and for an upsurge in violence a few years ago between the police and the army and the ethnic Albanian minority of Macedonia, which is actually quite a big minority. It's about 25% of the population.
Yeah, it gets kind of mixed up when they're in the Balkans, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that bit's particularly bad there because what happened was at the end of the Kosovo War, the elements of the KOA, the Kosovo Liberation Army, the ethnic Albanian militia in Kosovo, the guys that didn't want to disarm, they moved south into Macedonia. They were hidden by the big Albanian population, and then they didn't want to drop their calls, and they took up a really kind of phony in terms of justification, armed conflict against the Macedonian government. And the point being, so North Macedonia's accession was hampered by that. It was supposed to have joined whenever Croatia was supposed to have joined, but Croatia's now been part of the EU for 6 years.
Yeah.
So, again, Albania only became a candidate country only a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, they've got loads of corruption problems and whatnot over there, don't they?
All of the Balkans have massive corruption issues, but I suppose Albania and Macedonia maybe probably as bad as each other. Maybe Macedonia's a little bit better than Albania, actually, but as a Leave voter, Tom, what do you feel about this? How do you feel about this, shall I say?
Well, it's sort of one of those things where I don't have any particular issues with those two countries joining. Yeah. However, it does sort of give more credence to the argument that the European Union is still an expansionist state and still doesn't make any. It doesn't hide the fact that it is trying to get as much influence within the continent of Europe as it possibly can do.
Sure.
And it's one of those things where would the Albanian and Macedonian population of that would have joined and immigrated to the UK if they had been caused massive strife like people were saying about the Romanians? No, of course not. It's just another little. It's just no more than any other country that has joined.
Okay, to be fair, a big chunk of their populations would leave, but you've got to remember a big chunk of their populations already have left without being members of the EU anyway. So Albania and Macedonia are both actually very small countries. I think Albania's population's now fell below 3 million, but I think it's still 3.
Damn.
Macedonia is roughly on 2.5 mil. It's not going to...
Combined, they've got less population than the city of London.
Basically. Oh yeah, they've got combined they have half the population of London.
Yeah, so even if we were joining the EU, I don't think I'd have any
real
problems with those particular countries, apart from, as I said, the underlying principle, but it is still an expansionist nation, as it were.
Well, I mean, I want to sort of not pull you up on it, but I want to kind of question you further on that. It's an economic union at the end of the day. I know you believe it's potentially a political union, but what is wrong with further... By the way, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, because if anyone remembers, or if you remember, a few episodes ago, I was actually arguing against current further expansion to the Balkans to the EU, and I do still believe in that. I don't currently believe in expanding the EU for the moment into the Balkans any further, or further into Eastern Europe. So I don't. Obviously, Ukraine's not going to happen anytime soon. Moldova's not going to happen anytime soon. So there's not really much room to move further east at the moment. In terms of moving further southeast into the Balkans, I don't at the minute believe in further expansion of it. But I'm just going to play devil's advocate here and ask. So, why do you not believe in a economic union expanding for any further into the continent?
Well, I think it goes to the point which we've already sort of had an agreed to disagree point about where we think the EU is, or where, specifically from my point of view, where it's heading, and to an actual political union. And my sort of, there was another story this week about how the EU courts have now decided that if somebody makes a Facebook post or a Twitter post that the government wants taken down, the EU member state government wants taken down, then it has to be taken down, not just within the EU, but throughout the entire world.
Wow.
That doesn't sound like trade to me. That sounds like natural policy.
And again, I'm just playing devil's advocate because I've said before, there are elements, particularly within the EU leadership and presidency, that do smack to me of this kind of ideology of a further political union, which again I don't believe in. I believe in it as an economic union. I don't believe in it as a political union. Guy Verhofstadt is someone I'm really uneasy with at the top of that organisation, just because of his essentially, again, he has that very original six, so to speak, so the original six nations that make up the EU, Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg, Italy, France, and I'm missing someone. I'm probably not actually, but the point being, Germany.
Yeah,
West Germany at the time. This kind of, in those countries, there's kind of is a certain ideology within the political class of a further Europe, is a bigger European state. A lot of the countries outside of that first six obviously don't feel the same way. Britain doesn't feel the same way. The countries of East Central Europe don't feel the same way. And it's due to, again, past allegiances being, outside of those six countries originally. I mean, look, when those six countries were masturbating over a united Western European country in terms of ideology, diametrically opposed on the other side of the wall, you had Poland and Hungary and those countries that now kick up a stink within the EU were not even part of the same political system as those countries, the original six.
No,
they were seen as enemies.
Yeah, and they were under the Iron Curtain, of course.
Yeah, behind the Iron Curtain,
and I think that does feed into it. I mean, there was a lot of talk when Germany and France. I mean, effectively, the European Union could be viewed within the eyes of how do we stop Germany and France going to war with each other again. There's a big school of thought which was actually, that was the original intent of the European Union, and they had originally, even before the EU was proposed, thought maybe just Germany and France just be one country.
Because the fucking Maginot Line didn't work.
No, Maginot Line didn't work, and making Germany a weaker state didn't work.
No.
So just effectively abandoning the idea of.
Can you imagine we ended up with another Weimar Republic, where again we had a weakened German economy? What the fuck would happen there? Would it just be a repeat? Would just Hitler just rise again?
I don't think the Germans would stand for it. They are too much of an economic powerhouse within Europe.
But obviously, there's no grounds to do it today. We're not talking the end of World War II or the end of World War One. It's as you said, too big an industrial powerhouse. You're talking the most important economy in Europe. But yeah, I don't know. I suppose again, populism doesn't really rear its head the same way as it does in the UK and Germany, because for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and they really like the current political state, as it were. I mean, I think
as we think as well, how good they are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you said when you went to Germany last, the Germans just couldn't understand Brexit.
They don't understand in any way.
Yeah, I think that, and you may contradict me on this, is because they are definitely in the camp of most German population of, well, this is we're on the road to a European superstate or an empire. I think that's what a lot of Germans think, particularly in the north.
Posing that in that way, I don't know if they see it as a European superstate, but more as a united Europe. Which, again, in whatever way that manifests itself, whether it be a singular political state or it be a federation of countries that just cooperate.
Okay, well, it would be the next sort of point would be has there ever been a system where a federation of countries has cooperated so closely on economic levels where they haven't eventually turned in
No, of course not.
No, Americans tried it. The American states tried it and failed, which is why they eventually had to actually redo the constitution effectively.
To turn it into one state.
Yeah, to turn it into one state. I mean, that was the whole thing of George Washington, Jefferson all getting in a room and deciding what the Bill of Rights will be. And
that's why, in my mind, the EU should never overstep being an economic union. Being a trade union, should I say. Because an economic union still sort of, I suppose, suggests a further state integration, which, again, I never want to see it step over, which it has, I suppose, to a certain degree, over a trade union. That's why I believe the EU, I don't believe in leaving the EU, I believe in stripping back the EU's, not their importance, but in stripping back their bounds, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, on the principles of free trade and having a more seamless interaction, I'm for that with not just the EU, but for any country in the world who wants to have good trading relations with the United Kingdom or any other country for that matter. It's just the I kind of reject the idea that you can't have which I hear quite a lot, is you can't have a trading union like on a continental-wide state without having those political elements, because the Americans seem to do it quite nicely.
I mean, NAFTA seems to work okay.
NAFTA does it well. The Southern American countries have a similar arrangement where they
CARICOM in the both South America and the Caribbean.
Exactly.
Okay. I suppose not maybe the best argument, because again they're not particularly prosperous states, a lot of them. But I suppose NAFTA works well because you're talking about the richest countries of the American continent. So America, Canada, Chile. Who else is in NAFTA? I can't remember.
Is Chile in NAFTA? Because it's in North America.
Chile's in NAFTA, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
like I said, it's the richest of the general continents of the Americas, so it's Canada, America, Chile, I think Mexico.
Yeah, Mexico's definitely in it.
Yeah, and there's someone else I can't think of, probably Brazil.
I mean, the island nations are in on that.
Really?
The Caribbeans, I don't know.
There's not that many countries in NAFTA. I think like 6 countries in NAFTA.
Okay.
I think it might be someone out. It can't be someone out in the Pacific. I can't remember anyway.
Well, sort of as we've gone on to the subject of America, we might as well mention the couple of bits of news from over there.
Go ahead.
We've had the continuation of the Ukrainian scandal, or the Ukrainian phone call scandal, which there's not been that much movement since our last podcast on it. There's some new texts that have been released by the Democrats today, so we're not going to comment on those too much because we're not too sure of the context and if they've released the entire amounts, well, as I said. But predictably, the Republicans rallied around Trump, and Democrats are now in favor. Most Democrats are now in favor of impeachment. So both sides kind of have what they wanted on that, because they're kind of rallying around each other for the soon-to-be 13 months away general election, which is all. That's what I like to see.
With that now being the position of both parties, do you see Trump running for the next election?
Oh yeah, definitely. He's not going to not run. He's definitely,
because we are still a year out and anything can happen, I suppose.
Yes, I mean, I might be wrong on this, but I don't believe that any president has run for election after they have been impeached by the House, because Clinton was impeached by the House in his second term. Nixon never actually got it. He resigned before they got to the stage. And there was one other who I
always forget Nixon was one term, and not even that long into a term, was it?
He had won re-election. He won like 49 states in re-election. Yeah.
Okay, so I suppose he would have been re-elected in, 69, if that's the case?
He was elected in...
70?
It was 68 when he was elected.
First time round, yeah.
First time round, and he won in 72, and it was 73 when the Watergate thing happened.
So I'm thinking Watergate was 72, but it's not. It's 73, 74, isn't it?
Yeah. He smashed that second election. He was a very, very good campaigner and very...
Who was Democratic nominee? I can't remember. Not Mondale, was it?
It might have been. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he got completely crushed, which is probably why we can't remember him.
I think, if I'm correct, I think it's Walter Mondale, but I can't remember, in all honesty.
Yes. I would say the bigger news, although it's not getting a lot of airtime, is the unfortunate news that Bernie Sanders had to have heart surgery.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I knew this.
Yeah, he had to have some valves put in. He's apparently in good spirits and intends to keep fighting, but going through heart surgery in the middle of a campaign, as far as I'm concerned, that's a political death.
It's not a good sign. I mean,
No.
look, no one's actually pretending anymore that Bernie actually has a chance.
The polls have not been kind to him. It's basically happened at the worst opportunity, where Elizabeth Warren is now closer to Biden than is to Bernie, and it's not even close, really.
Yeah.
Bernie hit his ceiling at around 20-25% of the support, and he just has
Because
not
a few
increased it from
months
there.
ago, when was technically the start of the Democratic campaign, for nominee, people were still talking about Bernie as if he had a chance this election.
Yeah.
Which I knew was just bollocks anyway.
He's never going to excite the vast majority of it, even the Democratic base, let alone people thinking that he can excite.
I've said it before, because we're looking at this from a British perspective, where I suppose socialism is part of our left-wing tradition.
Yeah.
Where the left-wing tradition in America is not socialist.
But until Bernie Sanders basically declared himself a socialist candidate in 2016, it was a dirty word on all sides of American politics.
Because effectively, the left-wing tradition in America has always just been kind of liberal capitalism.
Yes, the Republicans would have called it socialism, but they never thought of themselves as socialist. Even social, they would have said social democrats. New Deal Democrats as their sort of
New Deal Democrats,
term.
the Green Deal Democrats.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but
that's why they use the fact of being Green Deal, because it's evoking the New Deal.
What do you see happening when inevitably the Democrats lose the next election with Biden? Where do you see the new left wing of the Democrats? What would their reaction be? Will you see a further purge?
I actually think, you said with Biden, I would say that Elizabeth Warren is probably the favourite at this point.
Do you really think so?
Yeah, she's only 2 points away on the real clear politics average, which is the sort of university accepted average.
I suppose she'd be a compromise to the new left of the party.
She would be, and she's quite astute, and so I think she's very much running the campaign of run left in the primary and run to the centre in the general, where she'll turn a lot more, a lot less outwardly progressive once it gets to the general election, because you're going to have to be when you're facing up against Donald Trump, who is, relatively speaking, at least on the campaign trail, is perceived to be a more centrist populist candidate than. Not centrist and populist, two contradictions there. At least on foreign policy, he can talk the talk. If not, he hasn't walked the walk.
Well, this is the problem. Warren's somewhat an unknown entity.
With most of America, most people know her as the Pocahontas character and she's actually she was very clever in that. She basically admitted that she had lied to.
No Native American blood. Native American blood.
She has less Native American blood than the average white person in America.
Wow.
Yeah. And she got into Harvard. Well, she didn't get into Harvard, sorry. She had declared on Harvard forms that she was part Navajo, on part, Cherokee, one of the tribes.
Yeah.
She appeared, this is the funniest one to me, she appeared in a cookbook called Pow Wow Chow, and had a recipe which was a family recipe, which I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't anything to do with Native American cooking.
No, like maize or oats or
complete just bog standard white people food. And her claim is now, because she's even admitted that she really isn't Native American, was that her parents had lied to her about it, which is kind of throwing your parents under the bus, because they're dead.
So she's gone Dalazor. What's her name? Fucking Thingy Dalazor about this?
Dozel, yeah.
Dozel, yeah.
Yeah, but Dozel genuinely believes she's transracial.
Well, she just fucking shoved her head in the sand, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. She was never she never really wanted to be a public figure, but people were just, particularly, understandably, black people were like, what the fuck
is
are
this?
you doing?
Yeah.
You're not actually black, stop pretending to be black.
That was a hilarious situation, but Elizabeth Warren, I feel like she's the bone thrown to the new left of the party, because at the end of the day, they're not going to get Sanders. But saying that, the new left of the party is very heavily... It's a lot of women, and a lot of those women are women of colour. They're all women women of ethnic minorities, and they really were not happy with Bernie Sanders.
No, both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have a big problem getting ethnic minority votes. Pretty much most of the ethnic minority vote at the moment is tied up with Joe Biden because he still has the Obama glow, as it were.
Yeah.
And traditionally as well, black people have gone for the more establishment Democratic candidates.
Well,
they did that with Hillary Clinton.
I mean,
as well.
there's this joke about Bernie bros, because it's basically the most Bernie voters are kind of, I suppose, middle class white men.
Yeah. That's the stereotype.
Where I suppose, and what they mean by that is most ethnic minorities are not typically socialist voters, apart from maybe Latin Americans in certain places.
No, I think traditionally they've been more anti-Republican than pro-Democrat or pro-Democrat policy, as it were.
I suppose, like in areas of London that are particularly that have a specific ethnic group that inhabit both there and make up the local council boards, they're more anti-right wing than they are left wing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they have what's known as the Black Caucus in America, where a lot of the representatives, particularly from the southern states, will get together and effectively be the voice of Black America, and not just for the states and areas that they represent, but for the entirety of America. Which has always been a traditional thing, completely understandably so, because it was a bloody job to get in there in the first place, as it were.
I mean, you understand why it exists.
And it's those all the legacy policies with sort of affirmative action and all that sort of stuff.
I really need to start paying more fucking attention to this race. Well, more attention, because I have like passing interest, but to be honest, I thought for the longest of time, it's just going to be Biden. So and they're not going to win. And the reality is, I think part of my fledgling interest in it is, the reality is, there's going to be, it doesn't matter who the Democrats feel, they're not winning the next election.
I would probably say that's correct at the moment. It's interesting. The bookies have Trump as a favourite to win it, regardless of who the actual person is. But the polls seem to suggest, at the moment at least, that any of the Democratic candidates would have like 8 points on Trump, which I don't believe at all. I
don't believe the polls, but it's natural the polls would say that. Natural in the sense that polls always suggest that there is there's always an unsatisfactory feeling towards the current president. There's always that, and the same with prime ministers in the UK. Partway through, or halfway, or most of the way through a term, there'll be dissatisfaction with the leader.
Yes, the only time when that's not been true in British politics has actually been recently, and that's more down to the unpopularity of Jeremy Corbyn than it is to the popularity of the Tories.
Yes, it's more there's just been nowhere else to go.
Yeah, pretty much.
And, I mean, I literally can't see the result being any different than Trump winning on some kind of like electoral college type situation again.
Yeah, I think that is probably true. And if Trump does manage to win electoral college, but not the popular vote, the movement within democratic parts of America to just abolish the electoral college will just get stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
Because I know that quite a few presidents have won the electoral vote and not won the popular vote. I don't know of any people who have been re-elected both times that situation happening.
That's where this could be interesting. If you claim that, and I to be honest, I didn't know that. It doesn't surprise me, but I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, would it fare well for Trump next time around? But if saying that, you don't know, he could have higher numbers in the next election.
He could do. I think a lot of people's reservations, particularly the sort of mild conservative Republicans who wouldn't have voted for Democrats but just didn't vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Would have been concerned that he wasn't going to vote as be a conservative, which he has governed very conservatively.
Yes, well, really sort of old school conservative in the sense of protectionism.
Yes, and he's not destroyed the country, which was a lot of people's. A lot of people thought he wasn't going to last for a year, and that there was going to be some type of weird international crisis after international crisis. Now it's not been quiet in the White House, but it's been nowhere bad as a lot of people.
Which I always thought would be the case. Trust me, I don't like Trump. I don't like his style of leadership and of presidency. Economically, supposedly he's not been that bad for America, from what the numbers suggest.
Yeah, he's been riding that wave. I mean, the tax cuts have helped, I'd say. The American economy.
I think that maybe what might sway. This is what I predict. I do predict slightly higher numbers in the popular vote this next time round than the last election, and I think it will be down to economics.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Although, as I think we've mentioned before, there there are weird signals coming out of those weird financial institutions.
Again,
that
if I
it
was
might
a
be
vote,
slowing
if I
down a
wasn't,
little
if
bit.
I wasn't American, if I wasn't an American voter, Trump would not be my choice. I'm no fan of Trump, but I'm making the point that there is a slowdown on the book, but I personally believe. This is in general. I do think there is another world recession coming because it's been 10 years since the last one.
No, I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
I think that we have not managed to fix boom and bust in the 150 years that we've had it, so I don't think we're going to be able to stop that
believe there
now.
are certain world events that would naturally trigger nationwide recessions in their country. So, i.e., in the UK, I believe the UK leaving without a deal with the EU, i.e., stopping supply lines and trade lines between the EU and the UK, would obviously hamper some kind of recession. Naturally, it would. Even leavers don't deny that.
Nope.
There will be a dip.
It is certainly a very high risk.
No fucking thing.
Sorry about that.
And then obviously in the States, I can't explain why the States would be, but that I do believe there would just be there's certain national events that will bring on recessions in terms of a national basis, and then I think there is just generally, because it happens every 10 to 15 years anyway, a worldwide recession.
It's normally triggered by some type of bubble, and the bigger and more important the bubble, the worse it gets, which is the subprime mortgage crisis was a very, very big bubble.
As it was last 10 years ago, it was obviously in relation to bonds. Well, not really bonds, it was just more...
it was subprime mortgage derivatives.
That's it.
Which are effectively financial packages which people thought were worth a lot of money. They weren't actually worth shit because people weren't paying the mortgages, and that's why all the foreclosures happened in America in particular.
Thank you for explaining. I think we're going to cut this off here because, as we said, there's not a whole lot that has happened this week, and that I'm not going to make any predictions this week for next because, in all honesty, I don't know what's around the corner.
No, I think it's going to be an even more quiet week because I think there's going to be a lot of negotiations.
So
closed doors.
I reckon it'll be the week after next. We'll have more news just because obviously we hit the 17th.
Yeah.
And the 17th or the 19th, depending, is the day we find out whether we're leaving without a deal or not.
Yeah.
Sorry. I wish we could just have a no Edmunds Brexit. Deal or no deal.
There's 22 boxes, all with different deals in there.
Yes, that's fucking amazing.
Oh, you get a lot of views on that. That'd be great. Get in Wembley Stadium, just have a look. Oh, and you could get all the EU nations holding the boxes as well.
And one of the actual deals is we actually have to end up at. Have you ever seen the Mr. Blobby theme park at Noel Edmonds' Grand Estate in Somerset?
I've heard about it.
Crinkly Bottom.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're getting off the subject here. I'm not going to make a prediction. Are you going to make your predictions for next week?
As I say, I reckon there's going to be a lot of posturing, a lot of statements about how governments, Irish, British, EU, feel about how negotiations are going, but we're not going to know anything until the eve of the summit.
Okay, it's Friday night. I'm going to go have a beer. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have a beer as well.
All right, fuck off.